Good morning, everybody. You are tuned into Crag. Something a little bit different for you this morning. I've got a paper here that I'm going to read to you. I read this paper back. I wrote this paper back in March. It was March 10th. It's called the COVID Situation Overview and the Abolition of Our Freedoms Because of It. Now, it's taken me such a long time to actually bring this to you because I was in two minds of actually whether I should. But I've decided, nearly a month on, that I'm actually going to. So forgive me as I engage with the piece of paper here rather than yourselves. Obviously, I need to read. So, my eyes will be looking at the paper. Before we get into it, a quick tip of the day for you today. So here we go. It's tip of the day. Okay, so your tip today is a quick one. Go on Instagram and look at a page, an account called The Mirror Project. It's as simple as that. Just go and take a look. It's brilliant. Okay, so that's tip of the day done. Let's get on with this, shall we? Start. We need to look at the situation as a whole. And instead of being blinded by what it is we are being told, we need to stay critical and remember that what we are being told regarding this situation as it unfolds is by the very people who, by this similar design, also control the outcome. Similar to a machine or vehicle, if you control the input, i.e. the fuel, you will have control over the overall output, which is the productivity or the velocity. So rather than being blinded by the controlled, agenda-driven input, such as the statistics presented via government updates in the media. And if we can take a step back from arguing amongst ourselves over petty subjects, such as mask wearing, etc., which ultimately falls under the jurisdiction of free will being a birthright of every man and woman, therefore rendering conflict over such issues completely irrelevant to the greater picture or the outcome for us, the people. This only ever achieves division amongst the people, and thus an easier target to overcome and suppress. I clarify. We the people fighting amongst ourselves over information that is clearly spin controlled and interfered with is an utter waste of time. Once we are able to get past this egotistical desire to prove our personal opinions valid, or simply more valid than someone else's, a person perhaps with differing or even a polarized perspective, we will then be able to access unified power in the people and target that power toward overcoming the greater evils at play. By this evil, I mean the oligarchy, the powers that desire to be, the cabal, those who seek to acquire total dominion over the planet. Yes, I'm talking about the puppet masters that pull the strings of our governments and religious corporations in ways that only serve them. They serve them through our subservience, our hardship, and our ignorance. However, without their willing puppets, us, they have no power. Power is a funny thing. For one to have power over another man or woman, the subject must surrender their power freely. This may happen through coercion, subterfuge, fear, or simple laziness, in our case, and ignorance. Either way, the outcome is simple. The total dominion by one over the other, and in this sense, the few over the many. Once we reach this realization, we must then accept that the power is ours to give. And as it is ours, by this very nature of giving it away, we are ultimately responsible for the situation we are faced with. Simply put, one may not rule over another should the subject not acquiesce. For the following section, though, let's simplify the perspective by using the government as the overall focus point for those who are attempting to enslave us via the aforementioned means. We can see there is an agenda in full swing when we look at how our government failed to stop the abolition of our freedoms. As surely, if these people valued our freedom, they would put in place measures to protect them. This they have not done. And since we are surely now aware the victim of this situation has been civil liberties, one must then come to the very strong assertion that this indeed was the intention in the first place. Just like the vehicle with the fuel and the velocity. Freedoms have been taken away. This is unquestionable. The people in power do nothing to stop it. This is also unquestionable. One simply needs to look around and pay attention, using their own eyes and ears, thus creating their own perspective as opposed to one painted for them by the propaganda media. With a government who appreciates civil liberties and values the rights to such for the people whom they govern, one would expect to see solutions put in place for the public to allow for the continuance of said rights, such as regarding face coverings in supermarkets, that old chestnut. As with NHS staff or the elderly, a time slot for attendance for people who choose to shop without one. This is obviously accounting, for argument's sake, the virulent nature of the COVID virus is as reported and severe enough to warrant wearing them at all. There would be no need for heavy-handed tactics such as hefty fines and prison time for those who do not comply, as there would be allowances made for those who choose, with freedom, to take the risk. The same applies for social distancing and so on. As a side note, a kind and caring government, one whose intent is for the people and for their freedom, and not their own selfish desire for total and corrupt power, a person would then expect to hear something as followed on the aforementioned matter. We, the government, understand that civil liberty is a very important commodity in our society, and we must protect it by offering a solution to those who choose to exercise their right to their civil liberty enough to decide whether or not to adhere to the guidelines, regardless of the risks. We hear nothing of the sort. Anybody willing to give you an ultimatum of any kind does not care about your freedoms, and would likely rather you had none at all. The very desire for power is the desire for others to be powerless. Furthermore, there is no advice given by our governments on how to stay healthy naturally, such as keeping a strong and able immune system. One may argue at this point that this being an alleged global emergency, blanket measures must be enforced. However, evidence of this is slim, and to the contrary, there is more evidence proving the opposite. Evidence such as the numbers of COVID deaths being presented in such a way that is misleading to the public. Via the small print stating a COVID death is counted simply because a person died within 60 days of a positive COVID test. Now, it was changed from the 28-day period, which I'm sure you all remember, in August 2020. These tests, which are now proven and admitted as being unreliable in the detection of such things as viruses like COVID-19. Please research PCR tests, their intended use and how they work. You may be surprised at what you find out. However, besides the point, these deaths only serve to show that people are dying with COVID, potentially, and not necessarily of COVID. But the numbers are still delivered to the public in such a way that alludes to the latter, thus creating panic and allows for easier control of the public. The BBC News Screen update reads, similar to this is paraphrasing, might I add, COVID death toll. The deaths written beneath in bold lettering. And below in the fine print, deaths for any reason within a 60-day period of testing positive. This number is by admission being consciously inflated. This death toll is the justification for the restrictions and the robbery of our freedoms, which therefore alludes to our freedoms being taken away by design. Why would numbers need to be inflated otherwise? Perhaps because the actual number of deaths is not sufficient to justify such draconian measures and restrictions on the public, thus proving the foreplanned intent on stripping us of the human rights which these measures take away. This systematic approach to instilling fear in the public through misleading information is the great deception. By now we are surely able to see the outcome the lack of prevention, and moreover, the manipulation of that which justifies the outcome, illuminates the motives. A government of the people, for the people, during a pandemic would consider your health above all else, offering adequate advice then on how to stay healthy naturally, alongside respect for freedom. They would not impose measures on the public which serve to only destroy the well-being of society, but also impose measures not backed by medical data as to their efficacy, whilst applying more and more restrictions to your lives, taking away more and more privacy and freedom for the foreseeable future. Once given away, something must be given back. And by analysis of character and actions, our government do not present themselves as being the type to be giving anything back to the public, certainly not their hard fought for human rights abolition. This is highlighted by the fact we are now being told we must comply to regain our freedom. This is a paradox, a contradiction. The act cancels out the reaction. Simply, compliance is not freedom, and will never result in such. On the other hand, one is free to comply should they choose. However, one must then look at the reasons for why they are then choosing to comply. If the reasons are by coercion or based on fear generated by inflated death tolls, etc., this renders the choice not a choice at all, or at the very least a choice made under duress, which in a court of law is inadmissible, therefore meaning said choice is not free, and in turn not freedom. The vaccine rollout is an example of this. Our government say if you take the COVID vaccine, you may have your freedom. But you see, freedom is just that. It's free. Therefore, if it has to be given, you weren't free in the first place. If you accept their right to give you your freedom, you are by design acknowledging their ownership of it. By assuming the ownership of your freedom via offering it to you, these evil overlords show their true nature and intentions. Any freedom given will not be without parameters, and at which point is a decided upon set of rules and no longer freedom at all. Reducing your life to a scenario from a playbook. This is a playbook written with evil intent by people who do not care about you or that which makes you a free and sovereign individual, and whose sole desire is to enslave you. This is what is happening. They are giving us ultimatums. They are telling you they own your freedom and only they can give it back to you. And they are dictating what that freedom will then be. This is unacceptable. As sovereign individuals, you may at this very moment go and see your friends and family. You may open your businesses. You may do whatever you please because you are free. You are free until you acknowledge another person's ownership of your freedom. By all means, consider others and take precautions where you see fit, as others should also do. As sovereign individuals, at no point do we require any person or persons dictating to us that which we may decide for ourselves. Personal health and well-being included. Now it's time to wake up. Now it's time to do something for one and all. Now it's time to stop accepting the reality we have been given and start taking control over the reality we want. It's time we got rid of the fear, because this fear is not ours. It was imposed upon us all collectively by design with motive. It's time to fight back. Like a game of chess, if we use an overview perspective and look at all the facets of the situation, or in this case, the pieces on the board, we are better equipped to not only see the moves which have led us here and the pieces sacrificed in order to advance the attack, but to also anticipate our opponent's next move or moves so that we can better prepare ourselves for how we are to proceed with our own attacks and defences. It's very simple. What do you want? What type of world do you want to live in, and what type of world do you want your children to inherit? We the people are the many. Never forget this. That which we decide is so, should enough of us decide it. It's on us now. We have the power to change our reality. Should we so desire, we must simply act, and act collectively. We must no longer give in to the separatist tactics of those whom our separation benefits. It does not benefit us. Being separate from each other is a decision. It's our decision. Being a free and sovereign individual is also a decision. So unity is also a decision, along with consideration and acceptance. Together we stand, together we overcome, and together we win. Please do your own research, seek out varying and differing points of view. Please accept others for their own right to an opinion and for their own right to choose for themselves, as so do you have these same rights. Thank you for listening. Love and peace to all things, everywhere. Now this is Crag signing off. Thank you very much for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed the paper. I certainly enjoyed writing it and presenting it to you today. And again, please like and share and subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to wish you all the best. And I'm signing off. Peace.